Joshua's kind of cute here. Look at verse 17. When Joshua heard the noise, he said, I think it must be war, sir. Excuse me, sir. I think there's war down there.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Year Through the Bible podcast. My name is Rodney Adams. I'm the executive director at Asbury Church in Tulsa. You are?
I'm Andrew Forrest, the senior pastor here at Asbury.
All right. So we are in our Year Through the Bible reading plan, reading the one-year Bible. We have finished Exodus as of, a couple days ago. We're reading Leviticus in the Old Testament. We finished Matthew. We're in the book of Mark. We're still in the Psalms and the Proverbs. But today, we got a lot to go through because we want to wrap up Exodus today. So I feel like we need to kind of get going here. We got a lot to cover, and we got a handful of good questions that I want to try to get to. If you're all right with that. Let me read this. So at the very end of Exodus, chapter 40, verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled on it. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Throughout all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the people of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and fire was in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. And that's the end of Exodus. So what's going on here?
So that verse that you read, Rodney, there, verse 35, I think is really key. Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on and the glory of the Lord was in the tabernacle. Well, the whole point of the tent of meeting is literally meeting. It's the point. They've been building it. They got the instructions. So why? So now, in some ways, I like using cinematic language to talk about these things. It's like then the screen goes to black, and that's the end of that season of the miniseries or whatever. By the way, all the books of the Torah after Genesis begin with the word "and." The first word is "and" in Hebrew, not in English. So it's Genesis ends and Exodus. Exodus ends and Leviticus. Leviticus ends and Numbers and Deuteronomy, like that. So they're all connected. They tell a story. So the problem that Leviticus is going to take up is, well, why can't Moses enter? But let's look backwards at Exodus. We kind of got through about Exodus 31 last time. So let's go back to Exodus 32.
Bezalel.
Yeah, Bezalel is the one who's filled with the Holy Spirit to do craftsmanship. So at the end of it, look at this. This is Exodus 31:18, last part of that chapter. And the Lord gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. So he gets the 10 commandments, he's on the mountain. Meanwhile, that episode closes, a new episode begins, chapter 32. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up! Make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So the Lord wants to be close to the people, but they won't go up the mountain. And Moses goes up, and he passes through fire on his way up. It's really amazing. It's the fire and the cloud. And Moses goes all the way up in there, and he's up there communing with the Lord, which is sort of God's point. He wants that experience for everybody. Moses is up so long, the people start panicking. I think in one of our previous episodes, didn't we talk about Moses' unclear sort of social state? Does he belong to the Hebrews? Does he belong to Egypt? And you almost get the sense here, they're like, we don't know who this guy is.
Yeah, like his identity.
Yeah, his identity. Who cares about this guy? Make us gods. Okay, so it's not as dumb as it sounds. It's not that they thought, oh, let's make a little statue, and that statue's going to speak to us and tell us. They believe that there are these spiritual powers in the world, and we want to make sure we get out of the desert, so we got to make sure we placate the right spiritual powers.
Yep.
It's not crazy.
Yeah.
And then Aaron goes, okay, verse 2. Take the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me. So they have all this gold they got from Egypt. So they bring all the gold, and he takes it, verse 4, and he fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And then they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So like they kind of go, guys, why are we talking about the Lord? Let's go ahead and go back to these gods. This is a major problem. I heard somebody say, this is like the fall story of Israel. The same thing that happens in Genesis 3 with the tree and Adam and Eve is happening here with them, which makes sense to me with what follows. Well, go ahead.
Someone turned me on to this a long time ago. Might have been you. I'm not totally sure. It's been so long that we're made for worship, and so and you hear this in the church in the church a lot. Like, if you're not worshiping the Lord, you're going to worship something else, and we use it with money or this or that or the other thing. But that's literally happening here.
Yeah,
like their reflex in the absence of a God in their mind or a situation that they wish were different or whatever it is to fashion something that they can worship like right away. And then of course later we see in Revelation, it's almost like the normative state is described as everybody's worshiping. Like you're like worshiping. Anyway, it's very interesting. Like they're I guess something you said earlier, it doesn't seem totally crazy. We should be careful to not to think these people are as idiotic as they seem in this moment.
Right, and
they are idiotic.
They are idiotic, but there's a twisted logic within their worldview, which is we got to have some kind of guidance. We're stuck here in the desert. Who's going to give us the right rain, the right wind, the right sun? We got to have the gods. So they start worshiping this. So then Aaron, verse 5. I think this is the part that makes Aaron look real bad. Verse 5. Then he builds an altar, and then he says, tomorrow, and look at Aaron. Look what he's trying to do. He's trying to hold on to the Lord. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. So you don't get the sense that Aaron is full-throatedly endorsing this pagan idolatry, because he's not the one who says, these are your gods, O Israel, in verse 4. They say it. But he's like, oh, actually, let's worship the Lord tomorrow, guys.
We see a little bit about his character here in a little bit.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then the Lord says to Moses, you got to go down. This is verse 7. So they've already corrupted themselves. They've already turned aside. They made a golden calf. And I've seen these people, verse 9, they're stiff-necked. Let me alone, because I'm going to burn these people up, verse 10. And Moses says, oh, don't do it, please. Please. Why are you going to let the Egyptians kind of say that, God, you're not a good God? And then look at it, Moses, verse 13. Don't forget Abraham, Isaac, Israel. You made a commitment, and you swore by yourself. Verse 14, and the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. I think one of the beautiful things that's happening here is that the Lord is bringing Moses into the problem. What do you do when you've made a commitment to imperfect humans? I think Moses he's getting a taste of leadership, I think. He's like tasting the problem. Like, what can God do there? So then Moses goes down the mountain, and he's really, really, really angry. Now, verse 17, this is important. Joshua has been hanging out on the mountain. So Joshua is not involved in the bad stuff going down below. Joshua's kind of cute here. Look at verse 17. When Joshua heard the noise, this is all they're carrying on. And he said, I think it must be war, sir. Excuse me, sir. I think there's war down there. But Moses says, no, it's not war. It's singing. And they come down. And Moses sees what happens, and he gets so angry he breaks the stone tablets. And then this is awesome, verse 20. It's like washing your mouth out with soap. He took the calf that they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to powder and scattered it on the water and made the people of Israel drink it.
It's like rubbing their nose in it.
Yeah, he totally is. And then Moses is like, Aaron, what's your deal? And Aaron says, well, you know how these people are. They're committed to evil. And they said to me, make us gods. And as for Moses, we don't know what happened to him. So I said, okay, let me have some gold. So they gave it to me and threw it in the fire. And out came a calf. I don't know what to tell you, Moses. So he obviously lies over the truth there.
Yeah. So we see, there's something about his character. Mm-hmm. There's a passive nature to him. There's he's maybe trying to play the middle. And again, I'm not trying to, these people are in a very, very strange situation.
Yeah.
They were under the thumb of Pharaoh for long enough to where they've been formed like generationally, by that experience. Now they're not. We saw earlier in this in the saga, they were complaining that they at least had meat to eat and all this stuff. They wanted to go back. And really, the reformation of these people hasn't totally started yet.
No, it hasn't.
So I can only imagine how wild of a scene this must be. Just someone in my reading text thread kind of noted just how staggering of a sight it would have been, the sheer number of just people and tents and just all the stuff that's going on in this desert. And you have fire and smoke and God, and they're at the base of this mountain and Moses is coming up and down. I mean, it's an absolutely bizarre scene. Yeah,
it is. And it gets out of control, as we shall see here in a second. You know, I maybe to be a little sympathetic about Aaron, you don't get the sense that Aaron wants the evil things. It's more like he doesn't have the character to stand up against it. Because even the fact that he lies here with Moses shows that he knows what they're doing is wrong. You know, so I give Aaron at least the credit for knowing what's right and wrong, even if he's not strong enough to do it. So I wonder,
so now that you say that, we're about to get to this just incredibly strange scene that at face value does not really make sense. So on Sunday afternoons, I lead a 6th grade small group of boys. My son is in the group, and there's 8 or 9 other 12-year-old boys in this group. And Harrison, if you're listening, I told you I would get to your question, and I'm getting to it now. Harrison asks, why did God tell Moses to kill 3,000 people? And that's the scene that's coming next. So Harrison, we're getting to your question. Do you want me to just read from verse 25? Will that be helpful?
Sure.
And when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, put your sword on your side, each of you. Go to and from gate to gate throughout the camp, and each of you kill his brother and his companion and his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And that day about 3,000 men of the people fell. And Moses said, "Today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, so that he might bestow a blessing upon you this day." And then it continues. I don't know where you want to stop here, but
we can stop there.
Yeah, okay.
Because I want to talk about that next paragraph in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. So by the way, look at the end of this is chapter 32, verse 6. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. I don't know for sure, and I don't have my computer with me, I don't have my phone with me, I can't look this up, but I think the word play there has kind of like a sexual overtone a little bit. There's that weird scene with Ishmael, and Sarah sees him, and he's kind of playing, and Sarah doesn't like it. There's something weird with that word. I think the sense is, it's not just that they are politely sitting in rows and worshiping. There's some kind of weird,
something weird's going on,
kind of like an out of control party. And so you get the sense that in the part you just read, that they've got to stop right away, and the people won't stop. And Moses is like, basically, if they don't stop, they have to die. It's kind of there's life and death consequences here, which maybe we're uncomfortable with, but certain things matter, life and death, and this is the direction of the whole people of Israel. Maybe if it's not nipped in the bud, that's the end of it. And the Levites go, okay, I'm part of it. And look at that verse you just read, verse 29. Today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother. The idea being that this has cost them something, maybe. Yeah.
There's something heavy with the ordination of this part of this tribe. It's definitely linked to the consecration of, or the ordination of these guys. It just kind of makes me wonder if it's all tied into maybe some stuff that we're going to see later. Like, you can't, when you're evil in the sight of the Lord, you can't really be in the presence of the Lord and live. And there's some kind of so these guys are being asked to kill all these guys. That then triggers their ordination into this service of the Lord, this priesthood. Mm-hmm. Later, all these guys will be the ones to sort of administer the sacrificial system.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wonder if there's something in all that that's.
One of the lesson is that the most important thing is obedience to God more than anything else, even more commitments to family. Jesus says that. Maybe that's it. I mean, it's a disturbing scene, but the whole scene itself is disturbing. That these people are going at there. It's almost like something has happened that they're losing control of themselves.
Yeah.
And Moses is like, we got to put a stop to this. So
one thing, can I say one more thing on that? I don't know how to reconcile this with the way that we think about justice and whatnot, but this is one of those things I wonder that's like a lot of other things in the Bible where we get focused on the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean wrong in the sense that like it's wrong to wonder what happened to those guys, but like it grieves us to hear that people are being killed, but we focus more on that and not on the thing that God is doing. Right? Yeah. God has placed a different type of priority on those people's lives and how all that's going to work out for their own salvation and whatever. And by the way, they're all being wicked. Mm-hmm. So we kind of feel bad for these people. We're like, well, how is God going to do this? But they're all literally rebelling against Him.
Why do we know what's the most important thing that's bad or good here? What if this is like just as bad as something else? We've all had that little silly thought experiment that if you went back in time and you had to like kill Hitler in 1920 or something or whatever, kill Stalin or something, whatever. I don't think any of us have like a moral qualm with that. Like if you would stop this thing from happening or some terrible abuser of children or something. Like, hey, you're doing this evil thing and your life is forfeit, therefore. But for some reason, when it comes to the Bible and some of these things, we just don't think that worship of false gods and at the Mount Sinai is that bad.
Yeah.
I think God's trying to tell us it is really bad.
Yeah. Okay,
but then this is amazing. Verse 30, Moses says, so everything calms down. Moses gets back in control. By the way, you know what's kind of interesting to me is that Moses' authority is never questioned when he's with the people. I know they're when he's gone just now, they're like, where is he? Let's worship the golden calf. But have you ever noticed that Moses has a complete grip on power in front of these people? It's kind of cool. So he says, verse 30, chapter 32, I'm going to talk to the Lord. I don't know. Maybe I can atone for you. So Moses goes up to the Lord and says, yeah, it's bad. Verse 32, they sinned. But if you will forgive their sin, but if you don't, just take my life. Blot me out of the book. Blot me out of your book that you have written. Moses is offering his life in place of the people there. That's essentially what he's saying. He's saying, God, just take me. And it's this beautiful act of intercession and sacrifice, which, by the way, carries the day. Mm-hmm. It's the Lord doesn't... At this point, they're still under the idea that God may come and wipe them all out because God has sort of said that. And Moses then offers himself for the Lord. There's a major lesson here for everything else we're going to see, the whole rest of the Bible. It is when somebody who is innocent offers himself in place of sinful people that things change, including Moses. It's really a beautiful idea here. Because these people don't treat Moses particularly well, but he's so committed to leading the people. Notice the difference between him here and Aaron, by the way. Aaron just goes along with it.
Well, I was just thinking that, it's so obvious that Moses is the guy.
Yeah.
And everybody listens to him. They may argue about what he wants to do or whatever, but he's the guy. And he's very different from everybody else. But one of the character differences, let me put it this way. When the people get mad, they rebel, they ask questions, they complain, whatever, what does Moses do? He goes to God. He immediately goes to God, which is, from what we're learning, is inherently risky.
Yeah.
You can't be in the presence of God and live. We'll see that later too. What Aaron did not do when they say, hey, we want to worship something else, Aaron's like, hey, hold on. Aaron doesn't say, all right, let me run up to the mountain.
Right.
Let me see what's going on. Let me find out where Moses is. Everybody hang tight. That's not what he does. He's kind of got a foot in both camps. Anyway, it just makes me wonder, you just see the character of Moses over and over and over and over again, even taking the risk just to go be with God on behalf of the people. It's kind of interesting.
It is. I love Moses. I think he's awesome. I love seeing his character develop and how difficult this job is that he takes on, and he delivers himself well. So Moses is visiting with the Lord. He's up there on the top of the mountain. He intercedes for the people. Okay, now here's the part that's a little bit of explanation is helpful. In chapters 25 through 31, we received instructions for what the tabernacle ought to look like. All right, fine. Wait, by the way, and aside from that, I was thinking about this. Well, the reason that we're given those instructions, I don't think is so that we're going to go build a tabernacle. I think, one hand, we're supposed to kind of imagine it. But two, it's because there's theological significance to what's there. So the reason the Jews have, the Bible has what it has is so that we will reflect on these verses, I think. That's why. It's kind of cool. Okay, so then Moses intercedes himself for the Lord. He goes up. The Lord reveals himself to Moses. The back of the Lord is revealed, which is a strange thing, which we can talk about. But look at this. This is chapter 34. This is one of the most quoted verses in the entire Bible. This is chapter 34, 6, 7, and 8. The Lord passed before him. Moses is hidden in the rock. And the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. But he'll no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. And Moses bowed his head and worshipped. Something about the character of God, that he holds both justice and mercy together. Moses is just worships by it. And then God says, and Moses says, be merciful to the people. So then, the Lord is. Okay, so we'll get to the face in a second. So then, chapters 35 through 40 are the recounting of them actually building the tabernacle. So God has a plan. They screw it up and worship the golden calf, but the plan is fulfilled in the second thing. So what's boring and repetitive is actually really beautiful because it shows that God's plan is still being realized. I think it's important for people to get that over 30,000-foot view of it. Otherwise, you read through it and go, didn't I just read this? Yeah, you did. I think that's amazing. And so they end up making the tabernacle. Now, we had a question maybe about the face of Moses. That's right here in Exodus 34 as well.
Yes. So Katie says, when Moses' face shone, do we think that his face was literally giving off light, or do we think he was just glowing like they say about pregnant women when they're glowing? If you had a guess, do you think this was literal shining light?
Yeah, it's definitely not.
He's just really
correct.
happy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of weird translation stuff, I think, when I remember reading. It's a little bit mysterious exactly what is happening from his face, but he has been transformed. There's no question. So I would say yes, his face is literally shining in the sense of the way the moon shines.
Well, so later, in a few verses, he has to use a veil. So there's definitely something is happening physical. It's not like he's just like the happiest guy on the planet,
right,
and they can't look at his face, or like he's literally shining. It made me think of later in Matthew, I can't remember the chapter, but the transfiguration accounts.
Like the end of 16, I think.
Where Jesus is shining as bright white as he could possibly be, and there's a bright cloud there, and Moses
is there, by the way.
Moses and Elijah are there, yeah. So
pretty cool.
And then you talked about this on an episode or two ago. Well, gosh, maybe it was the first one. We talked about in John chapter 1, John says that Jesus was the light of men, and we talked about how that is like literal light. So I think we can put this one to bed. I think he's literally shining.
Correct. Yeah.
Somehow.
Correct. So 33:11, this beautiful little verse. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Talking about the intimacy, the Moses and the Lord on Mount Sinai in the presence. Okay. Now, what has happened though between Moses starting out and Moses here with the shining faces? Well, number one, he's been spending time with the Lord. Number two, he has offered his life for his people. There's something about the life of God, this will be important in Leviticus, is only possible through death. And Jesus says this. He says, You got to give up your life if you... Wait, what? He says, he who seeks to keep his life will lose it, and he who loses his life will keep it. It's like this complete submission. So Moses, on behalf of these people who don't deserve it, offers his life, and it's after that that his face begins to shine. It's like a new... Forgive the video game terminology, but it's like a new level has been unlocked. Isn't that video game language? I don't play video games, but whatever.
I don't know.
He's reached a new level. You don't play video games either.
I play one.
What do you play? Mario Kart?
Mario Kart World.
Okay. Which guy are you?
I just pick whatever, just dominate my kids.
I've never played that. Is it fun?
It's a blast,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Okay. So here's Moses is shining, and it's just beautiful. It's just this beautiful picture. It says in the Psalms, Psalm 36, in thy light we see light. That it is only through the light that God gives that all other things become possible to be seen. And so it's like God is light, and he's shining it on Moses here, and Moses is then shining. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And the people are uncomfortable with it because Moses is so different. And he's different because of what he's done for them. So then chapters 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39 are all them making the thing that they've already been told to make, which again is boring when you read it, but beautiful when you see that. It means God's purposes are being fulfilled. I think this is really exciting because it means it doesn't matter how much humans rebel and screw it up, the end of Revelation is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is cool. I mean, it's hard to have, I struggle with the language of this, but we can, sometimes I get caught up in feeling like if I'm not doing the thing the Lord is asking me to do, or if I'm somehow missing it, then like his will won't be done.
Yeah.
Like
right.
Somehow I'm responsible for his will, and or if I see something, I know this is from God, but maybe other people are screwing it up. I feel like we're not, like his will's not going to be done. But that's not true.
No.
Somehow mysteriously he invites us to participate in it, and actually does use us to advance his will. And when we screw it up, his will is advanced anyway in his sovereignty.
Yeah, and this is deep philosophical questions that people have struggled with. But how can it be the case that human actions matter and God's will be done?
Yeah.
It'd be easy if human actions didn't matter. But they do matter. They have significance and consequences, and what God says is going to happen is still going to happen.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So this brings us back to the paragraph you began.
Mm-hmm.
With all that we've just been talking about, look how strange this paragraph is. After everything has been built, which they're supposed to build, then chapter 40, verse 34, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, the glory of the Lord filled their tabernacle, and Moses could not enter it. Well, what? So think how strange this is. Number one, the tabernacle is meant for the purpose of God to be in the midst of the camp. Secondly, Moses has been spending tons of time with the Lord, so we know the problem is not with Moses, so to speak. Well, what's the problem? Well, I think the problem is, the people are a sinful people. And this Exodus 32 fall story of the golden calf has fundamentally altered the relationship that God has with these people, which is why the book of Leviticus exists, to tell us, okay, how can God dwell in the midst of a sinful people? And Leviticus talks through all that. So,
well, okay, permit me here, and you're please swat this down if this doesn't make sense. But we were talking off air before we started about this thing I've been reading and listening to, where these Hebrew scholars or whatever are kind of going all the way back to chapter 19, and they've been brought out of Egypt. And now the Lord is with them, and things are starting to happen, and they get the 10 Commandments and whatever. I'm just very briefly, or I'm paraphrasing. The teacher I was listening to talks about how everybody out there would have recognized this as like a marriage ceremony, like a wedding ceremony. Well, they broke the covenant.
yeah.
Right? So if you think about breaking the covenant of marriage today, you may stay married, and Lord willing, you will stay married, and you can work this out. But things are going to be very different going forward, and seemingly impossible to repair. So it's kind of what it makes me think of. Like, they've broken the covenant. The Lord has kept the covenant. They're still married. They're still with the Lord. The Lord is going to persist in this relationship, but things have to be different now.
Well, okay, let's take adultery. Yeah, so the adultery is a major metaphor in the Bible for idolatry. It's kind of interesting. Okay, there's a marriage. One couple is the husband is adulterous, and then the wife decides, I'm not going to give up on him. I'm going to stay married. But you can't just kind of move along and literally never acknowledge it. How weird would that be?
Yeah.
He needs to kind of repent, show his repentance. Hey, I'm taking off the code on my phone. You can see I'm not traveling for work.
A lot of repentance has to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of repair.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that you do that. So I think what hasn't happened is the people haven't really done anything about it yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just think when you read through the Bible.
Well, and sorry to say
go
one
ahead.
more thing. Intimacy is then going to be different.
Right.
Going forward.
How can I trust you?
So here, intimacy is different now. You can kind of see how there's now a separation where it was different before.
Yep.
And so now they're going to have to learn to be intimate again with the Lord.
And that's why Leviticus is important. So Exodus, like all the other books of the Torah, ends with a cliffhanger, which is pretty cool. It makes you want to go, well, how's this going to work? And there you go.
Okay, so as we kind of get wrapped up here, there's a couple of things they're really like they're tabernacle related that I want to talk about. One is, and it just struck me as we were reading this, but if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out till the day that it was taken up. Does this mean literally like move their tent around?
Yeah.
So you have this highly elaborate, highly expensive, intricate thing that they built, made for worship, and they are meant to break this thing down, take it with them to another part of the desert, set it back up, including all the livestock and the tents and all the stuff. I mean, again, back to the thing I said earlier, what a sight that this must have been.
Awesome.
These nomadic people, where they're basically picking up an entire city and just moving it all over the desert.
Yeah, so Leviticus apparently has no time markers in it, in the sense of Exodus and Numbers have a bunch of them. 3 months after that, they did this. 4 months later, on the first day. And Leviticus is just happening right there. Nobody's moving. Leviticus, by the way, is the center. If the Torah is 5 books, which it is, Leviticus is the exact center. It's also the shortest one. So it's right there. And everything else moves concentrically around Leviticus. We can talk about this more next week. At the center of Leviticus is the Day of Atonement ceremony, but move out in concentric circles. And it's all mirror. So the first part of Exodus is them coming to Mount Sinai. And then the second part of Exodus is preparing for the worship. Well, Numbers, which is the 4th book, mirrors Exodus. The first part of Numbers, they don't move. They're packing up the tabernacle. And the second half of Numbers, they move. See how it kind of moves concentrically? Yeah. At the end of Genesis, Jacob is on his deathbed and blesses the 12 tribes. At the end of Deuteronomy, Moses is on his deathbed and blesses the 12 tribes. So the whole thing is like symmetrical. And so I guess the point is, when we get the Numbers, we're going to see them actually breaking down and moving this thing, which is amazing. Which is probably why they have to have such a big priesthood, I guess. All these guys carrying this stuff. It's pretty cool.
It will help us. It will help me make sense of the later parts of the Old Testament before we get to the prophets, and then even just when Jesus is teaching in the temple. If later you begin to take for granted the permanence of the temple,
right?
But they don't, because so many of their holidays and their sort of religious disciplines and rites are actually around the movement of and the impermanence of it from before. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah, like the holiday Sukkot booths or tabernacles, it's called. You move out. This is when you're in the Promised Land and you have a temple, but you move out of your house and you live in a temporary structure to remind you what it was like when you moved around in the desert.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Cool. Okay, final question here. It's actually a similar question from 2 people, so I'm just going to ask it one way. Jessica wrote in, Santiago wrote in. Here we go. When reading all the instructions God is giving Moses for the tabernacle, it is clear that God wants an elaborate, grandiose place for the people to worship him. Compare that to Matthew, where Jesus says not one stone will be left of the temple. In fact, the temple is destroyed. And then kind of back to the other question, why did God have such high standards for this place of worship? Here's Santiago's kind of the thrust of his question. Are we today to worship in big, elaborate cathedrals, or is the church meeting in a warehouse good enough for God? And you and I have talked about this a lot recently because of some stuff that we're doing here at our church, but how do you reconcile the opulence of the temple, the early tabernacle, with what seemingly is more conservative architecture that we might see now, or maybe even allegedly back in Jesus' day? How do you reconcile? Should we go for, I don't want to use the word cheap, but simple and modest, or opulence when it comes to places of worship? I think that's the thrust of their issue.
Well, we've talked about this a bunch on Sundays as well, but I don't think I would use the term opulent in and of itself to describe the tabernacle. It's meant to be Edenic, which maybe sounds like a distinction without a difference, but all that gold and all and the shining and all, it's meant to make you think about the Eden and God's presence and all. So it does have a point. It's not just fancy for its own sake, like the way a king might build a palace. It's not just fancy. It does have a larger point.
Maybe there was some practicality to gold. I mean, it was easily malleable.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you can bend. You can shape it.
Yeah, you can shape it.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. Okay. So then they move into the temple, and they have the temple, and they're not faithful. And Jeremiah tells them, "You got to turn around, guys." And he quotes them saying, he says, "Don't say, quote, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord," end quote. In other words, what Jeremiah says, don't start using the temple as an excuse to think that God's not going to get you. You can't live an unfaithful life, Israel, and expect that the presence of God is going to remain in the temple. And then it doesn't. The temple is destroyed by the Babylonians. So the temple, even in the Old Testament, is not a permanent point. It's meant to be helpful for the people, but God is not contained by the temple. Okay. Then when Santiago, whoever quotes Jesus at the end of Matthew 23, at the beginning of 24, all the stones will be pulled down. The context says this is when he's finally left the temple that last time after the turning over the tables of the money changers, and they won't repent and receive him. And he says, because you're not receiving me, Messiah, what's going to happen is this is going to be destroyed, which happens by the Romans in the next generation, exactly like he says. So again, the temple is not the point. The presence of God is the point. So I'm going to lay that out there theologically. And then at Pentecost now, the people of God are the place where God's presence dwells. That's why the fire is on their head at Pentecost and all that. Okay. But let's talk practically. I think it means that the places that we worship in, we ought to try to make beautiful because that honors God and inspires people, number one. Number two, the faithfulness of our worship is not determined by how beautiful our places of worship are, but by how obedient our hearts are. It's probably what I would say to somebody.
Well, and ultimately, we know that if we examine our heart and why we build something, that kind of gives you your answer, right? So are we going back to the Tower of Babel and let us make a name for ourselves?
Right.
By building this elaborate, church building or whatever, or are we consecrating something to the Lord and making it beautiful because He's the author of beautiful things? He's the author of beauty.
Also, Rodney, can you imagine the difference between saying, I'm going to build an awesome building and my life is now going to be amazing? That seems idolatrous. How about this? I'm going to build an awesome building and generations from now, when I'm dead, I want everyone to know my name and honor me. It's bad. How about this? We're going to build an awesome building for the people who come after us, and even though our names will not be remembered, God will be honored and worshiped here. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's how I feel about the cathedrals. We don't know those guys' names. Yeah. They honor us. So that's a great question. But it's a good example of why you have to kind of know the whole thread and see the temple itself is not the point. Yeah. God's presence is the point.
Well, and to flash back to something you talked about last week, you just now mentioned it. It is meant to be Edenic. It is meant to be. Right. It is meant. There's more going on here than just the opulence, quote unquote, and these people would come to know that. They would realize that that it is meant to be a little Eden in all of its detail. I'm struck by the fact that there's nothing like it in all the rest of the scriptures in terms of just its detail.
Right.
Jesus spoke in parables. He often said, actually, the things of God are hidden from people who don't want to see them and things like that. We're often left wondering, well, but where is Abraham going to go? God says, go to a land that I will show you. A lot of things are actually really vague. Like
Right.
it's the discovery and the lesson along the way, and the pursuing the Lord is where the lesson is. But here, everything is meticulously ordered, and God tells them every little thing to do and doesn't leave any stone unturned. That alone ought to tell you there's more going on here than just these guys are just building beautiful stuff for no reason.
Okay, so let's talk practically. People have been asking, what Bible should I buy? One thing I would look for when you can is try to find a Bible that maybe has some kind of pictures in the back. Now, my little Bible here has maps, but no pictures. But I have a couple other Bibles in my office that have pictures of things. It's pretty cool to see the tabernacle laid out. Also, like everybody else, I have very mixed emotions regarding AI and all these things. But it is kind of cool, these AI videos that show you what the tabernacle looked like. Yeah. Have you seen any of these? They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you can it kind of gets down in there and you see the gold shining and all. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so it might be worth checking out.
Yeah. Okay, I think that does it for today. We finished Exodus. We're going to move on. We'll probably spend a lot of time in Leviticus next week on the show. In our reading plan, though, we have also finished Matthew, and you're probably in the book of Mark, and so keep going. We're in the Psalms, we're in the Proverbs.
One thing about Leviticus is it's not easy as we're moving through it. And so I'm writing every day a little brief commentary on that day's reading. It's on my blog, andrewforrest.org, but we can link to it on yearthroughthebible.com. I think if you have a little bit of a guide to Leviticus, it actually kind of is interesting and makes sense, but without the guide, it can be kind of hard. It's so different for us.
So today's post was particularly helpful to me because you package the different, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the what these things are and what they were meant to do. For some things, it's helpful when you just kind of keep going and you persist in the journey and then it makes sense at some point. But for things like this, it's like, I kind of need to know where we're going. It really helps me to have a map.
Yeah, and we are really committed for people to read the Bible. But the reason we're doing the podcast and the reason I'm writing these articles is so that people will keep reading the Bible. I don't want them to replace the podcast with the Bible or the blog post with the Bible, but it should help supplement.
To supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's helpful to me.
All right. Great. Do not forget, go to yearthroughthebible.com. You can send in questions. We will try to get to them either on this show or you'll get a response from a pastor on our staff. I think that does it for us. I'm Rodney Adams.
I'm Andrew Forrest. Let's keep going.
All right. See you next time.